Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Malicious Compliance. Story 1. Subtitles aren't necessary, we need subtitles anyway. TLDR at bottom, please forgive any grammatical mistakes etc. It's been about 15 years since this happened, so some details are a bit hazy. This story goes back many years to when I was doing my AS levels, one of which was in drama. I, F, was working in a group of 5, same age but mixed genders, so 3 males and 2 females. One of our assignments was to direct and shoot a 5 to 10 minute single location scene, and the script we wrote was about a man meeting his friends in a pub, to tell them he was relocating to Saudi Arabia to work on an oil rig, only for his girlfriend to walk in and overhear this, at which point she goes crazy because he hadn't told her yet, before she admits she was cheating on him with one of his friends in the pub, and she runs out. I know, it's an incredible plot. Anyway, one of the boys' fathers owned a local pub, so we had free rein to film whatever we wanted on location as long as the pub wasn't too busy. Let's call the boy Matt. Matt had decided this made him project lead, which wasn't an issue. We got the filming and editing done pretty uneventfully, with Matt also playing the main character, with the other boys and I playing his friends. The other girl in the group played Matt's crazy girlfriend, with the publican, Matt's dad, and a couple of pub regulars acting as extras, wandering around in the pub, ordering drinks, the usual pub stuff. To be honest, I actually think the film came out reasonably well, terrible script notwithstanding. At some point whilst we were finishing up the assignment, Matt had the fantastic idea to include subtitles in the film. Whilst this was long before the days of what we now know as diversity/inclusion and clever caption generating software, it was a good idea but would take ages to add subtitles to the film via what was essentially Windows Movie Maker with a few extra features. We had divided up the work evenly, but I was the one who had the job to edit everything together. I said this would add a lot of work to my share, which wasn't fair, and I didn't even think it was necessary. I even emailed our tutor asking if we needed to add subtitles, who simply replied with "that takes hours, your script will suffice. Subtitles won't be assessed." But no, Matt was insistent that we needed subtitles and managed to convince 2 of the other students to back him up. I should also add that apart from asking his dad to film in the pub and acting as the main character, Matt had cleverly managed to avoid doing any of the actual work. He had said he was responsible for the script, but at some point we realized that he'd just offered the idea, and everybody else helped write the script whilst sat around a table. None of us really picked this up until very late into the project, by which point it was too late to do anything. So, malicious compliance time. I set about adding the subtitles as requested, but I regularly threw in some nonsensical subtitles just for the main character, played by Matt. Examples include "Now you want to make a big deal out of it all" being changed to "Now you wanna make it all a big deal out of fiddle," "How come you didn't tell me about this" became "Herg come to didn't tell me abooties," and "Really reliable reservoir of oil" was subtitled as "Rabble rabble rabble ra oil." I wasn't just trying to screw around with the project. Due to a combination of Matt's accent, his very fast-speaking voice, and a slightly muffled microphone, upon watching the video back, the nonsense subtitles actually fit quite well, adding a little comedy to what was otherwise a pretty dry 8 minutes of film. Furthermore, as the subtitles weren't being assessed, I could have just written Braille for everything and it would have made no difference. When I finally finished editing everything, including the nonsense subtitles, I had 2 versions of the assignment. One proper submission with no subtitles, and one with subtitles. To make it obvious which one was our official submission, I added a title card to the non-subtitled version with our module number, student names, and candidate numbers, whereas the subtitled version just went straight into the scene, as well as naming the submission file Group 6 Video Submission.avi, whereas the subtitled version was Output 2.wmv or something. I burned both versions to a CD, yes, I'm that old, and brought them in the next day, which was assignment hand-in day. The group sat around a computer and watched the final playback of the subtitled assignment. To say that Matt was less than impressed was an understatement. He switched off the computer as soon as he realized what I'd done, and stormed out of the room. However, we had no time to change the subtitles, and ended up submitting both versions with our script and reports. We didn't have online submissions at the time, so we had to physically hand in everything to the tutor, all paper-based, with a single CD containing both versions of the film. Whilst Matt wasn't happy, the rest of the group found it highly amusing, and weren't too bothered, as the proper submission, the subtitle-free one, was exactly as expected. When we got our assessment results back, we had scored well, but amongst the general feedback from the tutor, the last comment read: the subtitled version adds a new layer of depth to the protagonist, with his portrayal allowing the viewer to draw their own context. Is the character drunk? Is the character experiencing a mental breakdown? These questions add to the viewer's investment into the protagonist. Well done. Matt, who had refused to speak to me for the weeks since the submission, went beetroot red when he saw the comment. We'd met as a group again to get our results, and, similar to what he'd done when he first saw the video, Matt put his copy of the results in his bag and stormed out of the classroom. He remained indignant for a while before he quietly admitted that he never saw the subtitles adding that much to the film, but was clearly wrong. At the end of my A-levels, I found out that our tutor also taught Matt in another subject that year, where he was similarly authoritative and didn't do much of the actual work. The tutor had seen straight through my nonsense subtitles but found it funny enough to play along, in order to knock Matt down a peg. I was rather hoping that he would disregard the subtitled version of the film and just grade the normal one, but this worked out much better. Sadly, I never spoke to Matt again after that assignment, as that was the only class we shared together, and the next group assignment was with some other classmates. TLDR, fellow student tries to act like the project lead without really doing any of the work. He demands that I add subtitles, which aren't necessary and aren't being assessed, so I do so, making his character seem incomprehensible. Tutor picks up on this and plays along. Story 2. The doctor I worked for paid hundreds of dollars to eat dinner leftovers. I worked for an orthopedic surgeon who constantly ate people's lunches and would leave $10 on the fridge. He really loved leftover home-cooked meals. I don't get lunches off, I have to work to keep paying your salary. You can go buy another lunch, he would say. I hated him so much, but I got paid a lot. He was fresh out of his internship and residency, and he thought he was above everyone. We complained to the office manager. She went to the doctor and said we were all pissed about it. The doctor told her to deal with it. If the doctor decided to eat one of our lunches, we could have the office manager just order us something. This was amazing. There were 2 people besides me that had family and kids, so we always brought leftovers. If he ate my food, I ordered from the most expensive steak place in town. Appetizers, 22 ounces steak, 3 sides, a salad, and dessert. I'd eat the salad, and the rest went home. And of course, there are plenty of leftovers to take to work the next day. The rest of the staff was doing the same. Ordering full chickens, 4 to 5 different Chinese dishes, spending hundreds of dollars to replace stolen meatloaf sandwiches and day-old soups and spaghetti. The office manager went along with it. After all, he said we could order what we wanted if he took our lunch. It went on for 2 months until Dickhead Doc caught on. From then on, he had the office manager order him a lunch. I did miss trading off a cold pork chop and Spanish rice for prime rib and all the fixings. I posted this as a comment on r/iscredit, but, as I typed it out, I decided it belonged here. Story 3. Maliciously complying at state Medicaid. So for around 18 months I worked at my state Medicaid doing at-home call center work. Halfway through I got promoted from the member side to the provider side and I absolutely loved it. I loved my bosses and have zero complaints about them. However, before my promotion I had a boss that, let's just say, I didn't enjoy working for. Here are some examples of the malicious compliance that I performed. They wanted an average call time of less than 10 minutes. If you're not doing a new application for a customer, that was usually far more than reasonable. 1 month my average call time was around 5 o'clock. I got a write-up because, even though it was never stated, they wanted a minimum call time of 6 o'clock. So I immediately started keeping a closer eye on my handle time, and when I was running short, I'd just start bullshitting with the customer, asking how they're doing, following up on their answers, etc. A week or so later I had a meeting with my boss who demanded to know why I was making these calls last longer than they need to be, and I told him. I said if he removed my write-up I'll stop doing that. He couldn't, so I couldn't stop myself from BSing with the callers. We needed permission from a supervisor to transfer a call, so there was a chat room where people would say they needed to transfer, and normally it was pretty quick. One day a random team member, who wasn't a supervisor, was giving everyone, including me, permission. So I DM'd boss and asked if it was okay to transfer on her say so, and he told me that that wasn't any of my business and to follow the policies. So I left our angry customer on hold for 20 minutes until he DM'd me asking why. He was obviously a very smart boss, and he then told me it was okay to transfer when that other random team member said so. In addition to average call time, we got tracked for how many calls did we access our learning center and click on an article. Now if you had 20 people ask you the same question, eventually even the dumbest person can remember the answer. So after a few months I had a low % of calls, and when I explained this, I was told it didn't matter and to go to the articles. However, I found out that each article would only count towards your total once per day. So what I did was put like 50 to 75 articles in my favorites, and every day I'd just start at the top article and click on a new one on each call, even if it had nothing to do with the call itself. Suddenly I was close to 100%, and my genius boss couldn't figure out how I did it. Story 4. You want to make sure everything is in the bag? No problem. For context, I work as a baker at a restaurant chain that's popular for their French food and pastries, both breakfast and lunch/dinner, all day. Now, being in the bakery not only requires me to handle pastry and coffee orders, but also to-go and mobile orders. Since I perform both of these roles, there's usually a good bit of side work for me to do throughout my shift, so even if it's technically not busy, I'm still working and doing something. On the flip side, whenever it gets busy, either from orders piling up or just a large influx of people, I have to put all of that on hold to help customers and my co-workers. To add to that, the amount of time it takes to complete your average order is anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, longer depending on how many customers I have to deal with. You probably read this paragraph and though, makes sense, this is pretty obvious, and you're right, it is obvious. Or so I thought. Around 6 to 6:30 is when the dinner rush comes in full force, not ceasing until around 7:38. The dining room usually doesn't fill up on Thursday nights, but to-go orders pull a smash mouth and don't stop coming for a while, usually leaving me with 3 to 5 orders at a time on a good night. A little after 6 an older couple comes in to place a to-go order, and while I didn't see them at first, preoccupied finishing up an small order, the lady, without even calling out for me, says that she and her husband are going to look at some items on the service line, hot plate items, salad, soups, and will be back to order. I was taken aback by her manner, missing half of what she said as I turned around, but didn't think much of it at the time. She comes back to order a mix of line items and pastries, warning me that everything must be in her bag and that she will check it when it comes out. All in all, it should have taken me about 10 minutes max to get it out, and so I told her it would likely be around 10 minutes. She again is adamant that I do not miss anything, and tells me she'll give me her change from the bill as a tip if I do a good job, with a little grin following it up, because $2 in moist dog-eared bills is such a great incentive to do a good job. I've given her no reason to think I'd forget any items. I even read back her items and double-checked some of them to make sure it was all correct, and she still had to insist that I do a good job. Sure, no problem, it'll all be there. Cue malicious compliance. Before they came in, I had 3 or 4 orders I was working on as well as a small side task, but within the next 5 minutes I had 7 orders lined up, more en route, and I was getting backed up helping customers and waiting on items from the kitchen. I'm running all over the bakery, taking, making and bagging orders, and just trying to hop from one thing to the next while being efficient. Older couple, OC, still had 3 orders before theirs, and since 2 of them were DoorDash/Uber orders, I prioritized those so that the drivers can make their money. I had started working on Ox order but still had to take care of the people before them as well as incoming orders, and in order to make sure everything was accounted for, 10 minutes easily turned into 15 minutes. Speaking of what's obvious, it was also obvious to see that I was working my ass off and doing everything I could to get food out to people. Most customers, when seeing this and while also being surrounded by other waiting customers, are patient enough to wait an extra 5 to 10 minutes when it gets busy like that, knowing that if it's out late it'll still be the correct order, as I'm meticulous. The lady from OC on the other hand can't be bothered to wait more than 15 minutes, and once it gets to 15 minutes she comes up asking what's taking so long, stating that they are in a hurry, while I'm of course moving at a very leisurely pace, no worries or a care in the world. Thankfully, my manager was the one who conversed with her, because at this point I wouldn't have been able to stop my smart mouth from going off. Manager tells her it'll be a few more minutes before it's finished and that we'll have it out as soon as possible, which was apparently not allowed because she got upset and told my manager if my order isn't out in the next 2 minutes I want a refund. No way she can get a refund for an order she hasn't even received yet, especially having only ordered it 15 minutes prior at dinner time, and my manager tells her so. Now, although he said it would be a few more minutes, it ends up being about 25 minutes total that they have to wait for their order. Other orders took up a large part of that 25 minutes, but I also wanted to make absolutely sure that everything was in her bag, every extra sauce and individual item down to the most minute detail. I double, triple, and quadruple checked to make sure everything was there as she desired, made sure she had utensils, threw in some napkins, stapled the ticket to the bag nice and neatly, and when I called out Ox order she came and got it without a word and left just the same. Didn't get the tip, but she got all of her food and I got a good chuckle. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.